We hear you properly.
Fantastic. Good. Then let me start. Yeah. First of all, also apologies that I will not be able to join the panel discussion later, but yeah, very happy that I can still give kind of like a speed input in terms of like what I think are 5 strategies on how to work with circular economy stakeholders. And as Anna has shared, I'll kind of like outline those 5 strategies by drawing an experience I've collected in the past 2.5 years running a research project at Utrecht University around circular startups, where we have a consortium together with the city of Amsterdam, ING, the bank, and also Circle Economy, which is a boutique consultancy in the space of circular economy. And yeah, I myself, I'm very passionate about working as closely as possible societal stakeholders. I spent around 1 day per week at Utrecht University as a researcher, and then 4 days per week in consulting, trying to bring research into practice. Yeah. So what are the kind of like 5 tips I'd like to share around how to engage with societal stakeholders? I think the first tip, and this is something that has worked very, very well for us in the NWO project I run in Utrecht, is really involve stakeholders in the research design from day one. So what we did in this consortium project is we actually didn't come up with a bunch of research questions we wanted to investigate, and then we took to the society, but we actually went with a blank sheet of stakeholders, ING, to Circular Economy, to the city of Amsterdam, and we said, hey, we want to work on circular economy. What is it that's most pressing for you to figure out? What is it that you really want to know? And we basically co-created, co-developed the research questions already with the societal stakeholders, which then, number one, led to questions that were quite different to what we thought would be interesting, just because they had such a perspective much more anchored in their everyday problems. And then second, it also led to all stakeholders, of course, in having a great ownership with regard to the project, because they really felt we are researching what's most helpful for them. Now that's kind of like my, I'd say, strategy 1, to really involve stakeholders as early as possible. Strategy number 2, and this is again something that has worked really well on our NWO project, is make the stakeholders also co-authors of your work. And when I say of your work, I don't mean the peer-reviewed articles. Our experience from the NWO project is the stakeholders are usually not that interested in the peer-reviewed publications. But what we did in our project, and what we still do, is that for every peer-reviewed article that we write, or for every other one at least, we also write a white paper. And a white paper is basically a much shorter, much punchier version of that academic article that is targeted to the lay audience, that is nicely designed, that the stakeholders co-author, so they are on the title page with us, and that they can then also use, because it's written for lay people, in their communication within the organization or outside of the organization. And Anna, I'm very happy to also share 1 or 2 of those white papers we've produced around the project later on after this call for those that are interested. But we really felt that also writing something that the stakeholders can then use, so these white papers instead of the academic papers, of course, does take a bit of extra time in the project, but you have the content anyways already because of the peer-reviewed papers, and again the kind of like commitment of the stakeholders to the project, at least that was our experience, really vastly decreased once we started writing these white papers with them. So that would also be something I would suggest in terms of like getting closer with those stakeholders and really co-creating content with them that they can then also use. The third tip I have, or the third strategy I have, is don't involve these stakeholders too often. Don't bug them too much. So something we felt in the beginning of the project was we felt everybody was very excited about. We would research exactly the questions that these societal stakeholders were interested in. And then we basically suggested that we should meet up every month to kind of like give a status update. Now, a month in academia is not a very long time, as all of you know. So not much happens within a month, and you quickly run into meetings that are then more kind of like process updates than substantial content updates. So very early on in the project, we actually changed to seeing the stakeholders 12 times per year, once a month, to only seeing them 3 to maximum 4 times per year. We will only see them once we really made significant progress in terms of content, and then we do workshops with them, 2 hours, 3 hours, where we really go through our content with them in detail, collect their feedback, collect their inputs, and that was something where the stakeholders explicitly told us that they were so happy that we brought about that change, because oftentimes they felt that when they get involved in these research projects, they take up too much time and they take up too much inputs, and they all shared with us that they love our research project, but then in a company, in a government organization, there's so much other stuff also going on that's more urgent. So really being very cautious about the time of the stakeholders and really involving them in very pointed discussions where they can give content input, maybe 3, maybe 4 times per year, to us was something that worked much, much better than seeing them once a month. So again, strategy number 3 is don't bug your stakeholders too often. Strategy number 4 is about putting the research out there. And we as academics, we're of course used to present our research as at conferences, but also in the circular economy space, I'd say most of the conferences we go to are more or less purely academic conferences. So the audience will be PhD students, postdocs, assistant, associate, full professors. There will be very few societal stakeholders actually at these conferences. Now, what we did in the NWO project is we specifically actually looked for so-called industry conferences, where oftentimes we'd be the only academic out there. There'd be 300 participants, third sector participants, circular startups, really conferences that were very, very practical. And we still tried to get ourselves in there because we said, well, these are actually the conferences where, yes, we may be the odd ones out, but if we really want our research to be used outside of academia, we cannot just go to the academic conferences, but we also must go to these conferences where there's the practical discussions around circular economy going on, and these industry conferences. And in the beginning, actually the feedback, to be very honest, that we got from our presentations was a bit mixed. The conference attendants felt we were a bit too theoretical, but again, that was valuable feedback for us to further tweak the research in a way that it would be resonating for an academic audience, but at the same time, it would also resonate at such an industry conference where you talk to policymakers in the circular economy space, where you talk to circular startups, or where you talk to third sector organizations. So really seek out not just the academic conferences, but also the industry conference and present your work there. I think is also key to make sure that the work actually also unfolds impact beyond academia. Now, last but not least, in terms of like strategies to engage with stakeholders, in my point of view, really is seek feedback often and early. Something we do in our NWO project now is that after every session that we do, 3 sessions per year right now, we actually have a super small mentee questionnaire, just 3 questions. What did you like about today's workshop? And people can just give kind of like 2 or 3 inputs. What did you not like about this workshop? And can you give us a grade for the workshop? In the Netherlands, it's always from 1 to 10. 10 is very good. Please give us a grade, right? And that takes 2 minutes for everyone at the end of the workshop and gives us very valuable feedback to make sure that the next time we gather with the societal stakeholders, it will actually be an even more productive session. And then once a year, we also send out to our consortium a short survey, again, like 6, 7 questions. We are aware that our consortium doesn't have much time, on like how they generally like what we're doing with them, if there's anything they particularly like, if there's anything they want us to improve, right? A bit more in depth. And we then take this feedback, always in January. We send out the survey in December, take the feedback in January. And in January, we then together discuss with the stakeholders what we could do for the next year that further improves the collaboration. Yeah, so those are my 5 strategies on how to work with societal stakeholders in the circular economy space. Co-design the research with them from day one, make them your co-authors in white papers. Don't see them too often, ideally 3 times per year. Go to these industry conferences to present the work and collect feedback early and often. And those are experiences that we felt worked very well in our project. And I'd, of course, be keen to hear any reflections from you guys. And of course, I'm also keen to hear what has worked for you guys already. And yeah, Anna, let me stop here, 12 minutes, and maybe we can take one or two questions before, unfortunately, I already have to drop out again.
Thank you, Julian. We know your schedule is very busy, so we really appreciate that you shared all of these thoughtful and very concise recommendations. I think we have time for maybe one question. So first arrived, first served. Okay, does anybody have a quick question for Julian? Write it in the chat, and the first one will be the first, the only one answered.
Maybe if no one goes, I don't know if that happened in your research, but how do you handle if people are really giving you destructive feedback, saying something like, oh, actually, I can't be bothered to participate and it doesn't make any sense? Does it happen?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. Luckily, we didn't have that situation in our project. And I think the reason for that was that we vetted everybody who would join our consortium quite closely already when building the consortium, right? So basically we co-created, we co-wrote the application for the consortium with the members, and that gave us a good feeling if we could work with them or if we could not work with them, right? I think once you're already up and running with the consortium, if you get destructive feedback, it can really drain your energy and slow down your project, right? And I think again, the core solution here is try to get to the core of where the dissatisfaction comes from, it to the extent possible, right? But that being said, and that's also our experience in the NWO project, it is always a stretch to produce something that on the one hand is academically excellent and makes it into a Thomas Journal of Clinical Production, but on the other hand is also something that the stakeholders actually appreciate because it's very hands-on, right? So I think getting a bit of feedback in terms of unconstructive feedback is actually something that's kind of like part of the game and part of what happens when you're in such setups, right?
Do we have a bit of time for Kao's question?
What's Kao's question?
Kao, stop. Can you mute yourself? You have some seconds left. No pressure. Okay. He doesn't seem to react.
It's easier if you unmute yourself, Kao.
Okay. He is typing. No worries. Okay, then we will not worry.
Also no question.
Yeah, apologies, guys, again, that I could only join the 15 minutes, but Anna and I felt, maybe 15 minutes is still better than nothing. So
yes.
Thanks a lot for having me in, and hopefully next time a bit less rushed. And Anna, looking forward to the debrief to this session. Huh?
Yep. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay. Well, that was fast. Yeah, I hope you guys took some notes of also what Julian has shared with us, and maybe we can also, ask the rest of the speakers about some of the recommendations that we've got. Maybe they agree, maybe they do not agree. So yeah, some input for the panel discussion as well. Okay, our next speaker is Shyaam Ramkumar. Shyaam, he is a PhD candidate in Economic Sociology at Politecnico di Milano, and also Senior Sustainability Consultant. So, Shyaam, are you ready?
Hi, can you guys hear me?
I will make you presenter now, so you can share the presentation that you had prepared.
Yeah, sounds good.
So the floor is yours.
Can you all see the screen now?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, thanks, and thanks everyone for inviting this very interesting discussion how to engage stakeholders on circularity projects and research in general. Yeah, similar to Julian, I actually also have 5 tips from my personal experience working with different projects and different research on the circular economy. And before I begin, I can start a little bit about myself. So I did my bachelor's in economics at Northwestern. I was a sustainability consultant in Accenture in the US. Did a master's in industrial ecology at NTNU in Norway. And kind of got into the circular economy as an intern at the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, and then went on to actually work for Circle Economy, which Julian also mentioned. So I was working there for 4 years, where I also met Anna. And about 2 years ago, I decided to start a PhD in Italy, and also got involved with different kinds of organizations in Italy working on circular economy there. And as she mentioned, I'm currently doing my PhD to look at basically how relationships and interfirm networks influence the adoption of eco-innovation, circular eco-innovation by companies. And I'm happy to share more about my research with you guys later. So yeah, my kind of experience working with mostly companies on circularity spans things like, working on different kinds of tools to measure company level circularity, case studies and operational strategies to improve their level of circularity. My time at Ellen MacArthur and Circle Economy, we were trying to engage organizations as members of networks to share ideas, get involved in projects, kind of advance circular economy systematically. And a lot of the times we worked on these kind of multi-stakeholder consulting projects involving government, cities, companies, local organizations, investors, startups, etc. So there's a lot of kind of lessons learned, and yeah, similar to Julian, I'll share kind of my top 5, and luckily they're a bit different from his, so hopefully it'll still be useful for you all. So the first kind of key lesson that I kind of learned is to kind of keep things simple, especially when you have complicated research projects. It can be difficult for companies specifically, I don't know about other stakeholders, but companies specifically to engage given their limited time and resources. So for example, when I was working at Circle Economy, we were developing a measurement tool, a circularity assessment tool to measure company circularity. And at the early stages, we made the tool super complex. So there were 60 different indicators that required extremely detailed information from lots of different sources, and a lot of companies didn't really have the time or resources to spend on something like that. So we kind of ended up having to go from this extremely detailed measurement to a very short and simple assessment that would take them a very small amount of time to complete. And while the information that we gathered isn't as detailed, it at least gave us some indication of company circularity. So yeah, maybe an important lesson to kind of think about in different kind of research projects or research streams that you all are working on within Cresting, is to think about how to either keep any tools or inputs that you acquire from companies to keep it simple, or to kind of maximize existing efforts within organizations or existing information within organizations, so you don't burden them too much with your research. The kind of second important lesson that I found is to kind of find a champion within companies internally. So there's lots of people within organizations who engage with sustainability or environmental issues, but kind of finding a champion to support your research or your project is crucial. So during the PhD that I'm doing, I wrote a research paper exploring how Jaguar Land Rover, the car company, utilized closed loop recycling in a project called Real Car, and how they kind of convinced their suppliers to adopt different processes to collect and recycle waste from their production to produce cars using recycled metal. And one of the kind of huge benefits of my research was to have the former car project, who had since moved on from Jaguar Land Rover, to be one of the key individuals to engage for my research. And he had a lot of knowledge and contacts, and he was willing to devote his time to meet all the people who were involved in the project. So kind of finding that champion or that key person who can provide you kinds of resources or connect you to different contacts and connect you to different influential stakeholders is going to be very important to make sure that your research or your projects succeed. And especially, if you want to engage with companies, perhaps instead of engaging them directly, you can also try to identify kind of influential stakeholders that you can connect with, who can then pass on your project. And then, so that kind of segues into the third kind of lesson, to identify influential stakeholders. So, few companies, from my experience, just having worked in the field, are truly motivated to implement sustainable initiatives or circular economy projects or research themselves. And many are influenced by kind of stakeholders that they're surrounded by. So as an example, when we were working with the city of Glasgow to engage circular economy initiatives with local companies, the Chamber of Commerce of the city was a key stakeholder for the project. So, we couldn't have maybe reached as many companies or businesses to raise awareness of the topic of circular economy or engage them in the work that we were doing if it weren't for their involvement. And they were kind of a trusted name in the community, and a lot of businesses interacted quite closely with them. So their involvement really encouraged a lot of organizations, time and resources, and led to some really interesting multi-stakeholder circularity projects as a result of that. So yeah, indeed, I think it's important if you have, for example, within your research, the aim to reach multiple organizations or different kinds of organizations. It could be worthwhile to see how you could approach, for example, business associations or those kinds of stakeholders that have that reach or that extensive network of contacts, to try to find those kind of broader networks to connect with in order to reach different kinds of companies. And then, the other lesson that I kind of learned is to kind of involve the value chain. So company priorities are always changing, and sort of making sure that, one second, sorry, I think, so for some reason the slides kind of got switched around. The point I wanted to make was just kind of involve the value chain. So essentially, circularity is not sort of specific to one organization. So it's important to also incorporate different kinds of competitors or different kinds of stakeholders and suppliers and other kinds of organizations in order to make sure that the whole value chain is represented, so that organizations can find each other and kind of develop and build relationships that can make them more interested and more engaged in the research or the project. And the last thing I wanted to mention is that it's important also constantly maintain relationships. So a lot of times I guess research spans multiple years or takes a very long time. And it's hard to kind of keep companies engaged for a long period. It's very kind of short-sighted and short-term oriented. So even working at Circle Economy, we tried to engage a lot of companies who were very interested in the very beginning and highly involved in their first year, but then over time their interest kind of decreased or waned. Who we were in close contact with, so we had to rebuild different kinds of relationships and contacts within these firms. So it's important to kind of reevaluate the changing priorities of these companies and kind of reestablish relationships with them in order to kind of keep them involved and engaged in projects and in different research. So yeah, basically the short summary of kind of lessons that I learned in working with companies on different projects at Circle Economy, doing research through my PhD, and also interning with the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, and also just from the kind of trends that I've been seeing around the topic of circular economy. So yeah, thank you very much for your time. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them now or during the panel discussion later.
Okay, thanks a lot, Shyaam. I think we have some minutes for comprehensive, like questions of comprehension, like to make sure everybody understood. So if you have any pressuring question, you can just unmute yourself and give it a shot to Shyaam.
Yes, so I do have a question. It's not about I understood what he said. It's just a question more about maintaining the stakeholders engaged in the project. What makes it work for you, or what did you do that maintained the people engaged into the project?
Yeah, thanks. So basically what we would try to do every year is kind of check in on all the different companies that, so for example, when I was working at Circle Economy, we had this kind of membership program for companies to get involved in different projects and research, et cetera. And so what we would do is kind of every year check in on those organizations and see if they were still interested in continuing in being a part of the network, being a part of the different kinds of projects and research that we were doing, and trying to understand, maybe if their priorities had changed and if they want to kind of continue. And sometimes we would find that the people that we were in close contact with had left, and so not to say that we did a great job of maintaining those kinds of relationships, but I think it's important to kind of constantly check in on the different organizations who are involved in projects or research to kind of make sure that they're still engaged and still kind of interested in working with you. I know Julian mentioned that you don't want to bother them too much, but you also don't want to leave them for too long, basically. So there's a sort of balancing act in terms of spending the appropriate amount of time to keep these stakeholders engaged. Hopefully that answers your question, Santiago.
Yeah, well, I was looking more into, like, when you propose the collaboration with them, do you talk about giving them some sort of benefits or added value, economically, socially, image, I don't know, like, how do you engage with them and like for them to maintain the relationship with you?
Yeah. So indeed, like in the very beginning, we would always kind of mention, obviously, like a lot of the companies who are interested in the circular economy and want to work on specific projects or research have a goal in mind, whether they want to do it because they want to improve their image, or they actually want to realize some of the benefits of circular economy from a cost savings perspective, or it's like a new avenue of R&D for them as a business. They had these kinds of reasons why they wanted to enter into the project. So we kind of made it clear how that project was going to meet their goals and their kind of needs. So on a project basis, it was quite easy to convince them to get on board because there was a kind of clear value proposition for them to get involved. The question then becomes, the circular economy doesn't end with a single project. So how do you keep the journey going with these organizations? And that's where you need to constantly understand, okay, we've done this project, we've met certain goals that you've had in mind. How can we kind of build on this to continue your journey on the circular economy and explore either other opportunities for you to improve as a business or other areas to take advantage of? And that's a kind of an ongoing conversation.
Super, thank you.
Eric, did you want to say something?
Yeah, thank you. If there's still time, I would like to ask a short question. And thanks a lot for sharing your experiences. And my question is about identifying the champions within an organization. I think that's very interesting. But also, in my experience, sometimes they are hidden, and you don't really know where they are in an organization or how to find them. Do you have some experience or tips to share about that?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and you're absolutely right. It is difficult to really try to find the key person who can help you. I think in the project, at least I've been involved in, I've been quite lucky in that we usually have engaged with the sustainability directors of companies, or those who have taken on the role of wanting to explore circular economy, which is why they approach, for example, circular economy, to kind of get involved in that network and be a part of those projects. And with the PhD as well, I got introduced to that manager from some other contacts that I had within the aluminium industry. So yeah, I think it's difficult to say, like, how do you find those hidden champions, because it's a matter of luck, to be honest, more than anything else. But I think, as you get to know an organization and get connected to them, you kind of start to identify who are the kind of people on the team within the organization who are really interested in what you have to offer, either in terms of a project or a particular stream of research, and who is more receptive to that. And so kind of identifying those people and kind of having further discussions with them and seeing what kinds of avenues they can open up within the organization that's within their power could help you identify those kinds of champions, especially those with enough influence to help you achieve your goals as well as researchers.
Right. Thank you. It's very clear. A lot.
Cool. Okay, I think we will start with our next speaker. Initially, we contacted Anna Tarí, who is the CEO of the Circular Economy Club. I have the description here because it's quite elaborated. The Circular Economy Club is the largest network of circular economy professionals with over 5,000 members and 150 members companies in 140 countries. So yeah, we thought this was a sort of success story for a multi-stakeholder circular economy project. So yeah, initially she agreed to participate, but due to personal reasons, she cannot be with us today. Nevertheless, we got forwarded to Mr. David Greenfield. David Greenfield is the manager director at Social, Environmental, and Economic Solutions. Hi, David. Where are you joining us from?
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm joining you from just outside Brighton in the UK. Okay, nice. So yeah, if I'm not mistaken, you are the External Affairs in Europe officer for the Circular Economy Club. Yes. You also play different roles like the mentor and the organizer of Circular Economy Club London, Circular Brighton and Hove, and 5 more organizations. Busy, yes. Yeah, okay. Thanks for joining us. That's so, right. Yeah, shall we first play the video from Anna, and then, we give you turn to you to make some additions. Perfect. Okay.
Hello, everyone. This is Anna Tarí. I am the founder of the Circular Economy Club. And I'm going to share with you today some of the lessons we learned when building the Circular Economy Club, and I hope they are useful for you. So let me give you a bit of background about what the Circular Economy Club is. So it's the widest international network of organizations and individuals who are working on the circular economy, and we are present all over the world. We have over 225 organizational members. So as you see here, they come from different backgrounds, regions, or also sectors. So we have businesses, consulting firms, networks, media, like so many interests that we have to learn how to manage, and I'll share some of that later. And then we also have collaboration partners. So you see here the circulars. This is the WEF awards arm for the circular economy. We have the Cradle to Cradle Congress every year. So yeah, anyone who is a big organization in the field, we would partner with. The partnerships are many times promotional, so we help promote the circulars and they help promote the circular economy club activities, but we also have more like deeper collaborations, like knowledge collaborations. We have one of the key pillars is the SEC certificates. So we produce certificates that people can take online at their own pace, and we collaborate with cities or companies who want to train their staff on circular economy issues, and we also collaborate with people who train others, like some training agencies or consultancy firms, or even universities sometimes who want to provide these certificates, and we can help them get the materials ready and provide this training for their own clients. And then we have the SEC chapters program. So we have over 260 local chapters worldwide. So what that means is that many of our members voluntarily want to set up a SEC at a local level. So they register online and open the club at in their own cities. So for example, you would have like SEC New York or SEC Nairobi, or like any representation at a city level, and we have those chapters, and they organize workshops, initiatives, or anything that brings the circular economy to their city, and that helps position them in the spotlight in their own country especially. And this is just a couple of pictures of the workshops that our chapters organize. And this is the online resources we have in the club, and I shared it because this was a lesson we learned. So we were inputting ourselves many resources on the website until one day we said, why don't we allow any member to upload resources on the website? So we opened that option, and members kept adding things. So now we have the biggest repository of anything in the circular economy, from awards, funding, events, podcasts, like anything that you can think of. And that's because we work a lot uploading them, but also because our members worked a lot in contributing to it. So we learned that by providing this opportunity to members to be part of the project and collaborate, people did, and people were very engaged, and they were happy to see the resources up there, and they are featured as the author of the resource, so they keep their recognition. So that helped in terms of how to managing member engagement. And we also do global events. So what global events mean is that in the global team, like we set up some specific weeks along the year for specific topics. So for example, 2 years ago, we did the Circular Economy Mapping Week. And during that week, all the chapters were invited to participate in it and host workshops in their cities to identify which were the circular economy projects going on already in their cities. So they gather everything in an Excel, and they send it to the club. So we released the database, and we had more than 3,000 initiatives of projects working on the circular economy. So I think those global events work really well, especially if you're interested in gathering data or like any kind of feedback or information at a local level. These kind of like global events where people can do a workshop and gather that data and send it to you, and you can release a global report. That was a very important lesson for us, that this works. Then we have the mentors program. So that's for any professor who wants to, or senior like management consultant, like someone working in the circular economy for a long time and wanting to provide their skills pro bono to students and startups. So we have some of the biggest names in the field, as you can see here, and we provide free mentorship for startups or students. Many students who are working on their thesis want some feedback before they run it to their committee internally, and we provide that. And lessons learned from this, I think one of the lessons that we think is very important is giving people the resources they need. And that sounds very obvious, but it's not always done. So really thinking about what your users need and providing them these resources, and also help them contribute. So I think many organizations that we've seen in the club, like they assume they can give everything to their users and that's it, but allowing them to contribute helps building a nice relationship. And that follows with point 2, helping people connect and feeling part of a community. So by allowing the global events example that I mentioned, by allowing people to have a global event that was happening at the same time all around the world, people felt a connection. People felt they had something in common that was going on in Kampala while in Seattle at the same time. So that helped the community blend really well. Point 3 is focus on real action and giving people recognition. So real action is very important. We see every single day initiatives that they lack action, or at least they lack the communication of the action, putting it in words that people can understand what the output can be. So sometimes things can be very simple, but they need to be clear. So for example, in the Circular Economy Mapping Week, the output was clear. Like we were building the biggest database in the circular economy and everyone was part of it. And that was really cool. And that's why people engaged with it. So whatever people are working on, feeling there's an output, feeling they are part of it, and then giving them recognition for what they've done. It's not that you do this for me, I publish it as if I was had done it. So giving people recognition through any kind of alternatives that you can think of, like getting them interviews in media or featuring them on the website and social media for their contribution. Anything that helps people feel recognized helps. And another thing is point 4, helping people stand out. So I think we allowed with the SEC chapters program, we allowed for that role of standing out. I mean that the people who are volunteers and open the club in their cities, they immediately are like the central person in the city to talk about the circular economy because they are running all these workshops or events and they stand out from all the others. So having a program that helps people stand out works really well when trying to build engagement, partnerships, and collaborations. And I'll talk a bit about my research. So I'm also doing I'm in the PhD program at Boston University at the Western School of Business, and I'm in the marketing department. I focus on consumer behavior and experiments. So I do lots of psychological experiments, and they are obviously all about the circular economy. So I studied things like, for example, take back programs from companies. So when companies are implementing these take back programs that will give you a 20% off if you bring your old car seat back to store, or H&M program, like we'll give you a 15% off if you bring back your clothes, all clothes, to recycle, donate them, or resell. So any kind of take back program like this, I study how does it influence consumers' perceptions of the products, the value they give to the products they are buying at the moment, knowing that they are going to recycle them or donate them or even resell them, how long they are going to use it for, will they take better care of it, or this is just an example of what I researched, but yeah, of course, there's lots of topics that I'm starting to focus on related to new business models in the circular economy and consumer behavior. And just some of the quick learnings that I think would have been very useful before starting to blend academia and I mean with the background of the Circular Economy Club. One is in academia, like I think it has been key to have found a niche so early, because I think most of the colleagues I have in academia during the PhD program, they spend the maybe 3 first year trying to find their topic or the area that they are interested in and that works. And it's relevant at the theoretical level. So I think in the circular economy, you have already picked a topic that is interesting enough, but I think finding a niche is important, and finding a niche, a specific area that is really interesting to you because you're going to work on it so many hours. And once you find that niche, try to list the practitioners' problems related to it. So if you're a company within that niche or a client from someone in that area you're studying, that trying to list what problems they have, or even sometimes if you can, even doing an internship in an organization can open your eyes very much to research ideas for later. So I think listing the problems from the academics, from the practitioner's perspective, and then finding what can theory explain to solve that problem, and what theory can't explain. And when it can't explain yet, it's where you have a research idea and you can work on it, and then you can try to get data from a company or get them involved somehow. So the point 3 is learning to satisfy stakeholders with different priorities. I know this may sound obvious, but it's not. And we get, just to clarify this with an example, we get maybe once every week we get like a PhD student somewhere, or master students as well, somewhere writing to the Circular Economy Club asking if we can send a survey out to our membership. And many times we don't have even time to read the email, because I have every day 150 emails to reply, plus the academic work, plus the things I need to do outside of, so many times we don't have the time to think about it. The promotional space to put in the survey, because we have so many other things we want to communicate. But that approach, if it was different, if it was like, for example, an approaching where you share, okay, this is the topic I'm researching, and these are like 3 key articles that you could share with or videos that you could share with your membership and would be really useful for them, because they have specific learnings. And also, here's the survey I'm running, and I'm trying to understand this and get these answers. And when we get the results, I'm gonna send you an infographic that you can share with your members. Then I would consider sharing the survey. So it's like people are gonna help you if you make it easy for them to help you. So that helped me a long way from 2012, where I started to run the club, until now, always thinking about what the other wants, what are the other's priorities, and shape my request in a way that they want to do it as well. So in that case, the priorities of the club is serving our members. So you are providing me a survey link that is helping me serve my members, because I'm going to keep them better informed and so on. So I hope these takeaways were useful. And anything you need, feel free to check out our website. If you're a student, you can get free mentorship for like sharing thoughts about your projects. You can go to the website, get involved, get free mentoring. If you're a consultant or academic, we can do collaborations in terms of providing certification for your students or your clients, and any collaboration that we can help with, feel free to reach out and also ask me any questions, and I'll try to help out. Thank you so much for your attention. I hope that was helpful.
So that was a contribution from Tarí, but hopefully we have David Greenfield here to make further points, make some additions, express disagreement. The floor is yours, and we will also make some questions to you afterwards.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Anna, as well, for her video, but also thank you to Anna for inviting the Circular Economy Club. I did have a couple of slides, but I can't work out how to share them, so I'm not going to bother, which is fine. Really just to tell you a little bit about my journey and how I've engaged with people. So I've actually got PhD.
Sorry
there we go.
For interrupting you. Do you want to share some slides?
Yes, I can, if I can find my mouse again. It's just decided to disappear. The wonders of virtual technology.
At the bottom right, on the right side of the share webcam sign, you can share your screen. Don't use the plus sign.
Okay, yes, perfect. Thank you very much. I suspect it's going to kick me out because I haven't shared it before, but let's give it a go and see what it says. No, it's not going to let me do that, I don't think. Yeah, let's try that. No, okay, don't worry. So, a little bit about me. I run my own research and innovation practice called SOENECS, which is a little company that I started 7 years ago after working in the public sector for 15 years. And I've been working in sustainability and environmental activity for nearly 25 years, which makes me quite old. What I've spent a lot of my time doing is working with very senior people at a public sector and private sector level, directors, chief executives, and really trying to understand how we can take something as enormous as circular economy and help them to actually embed it in their own organizations. And the Circular Economy Club is an exceptionally good way of doing that, because it gives the organizations, the companies, a third party to be able to refer to. That's one of the key things. One of the major things I've learned from working in this area over the last 20 years is for the decision makers, you have to give them an option that they can make people think is theirs. So if you've got something like the Circular Economy Club or a consultancy, in many cases, the champion will use that, reference it, and then make it their own activity. So particularly with politicians. So building those relationships is absolutely critical, and giving them and empowering them with enough information is key. I've just spent the last year and a half working with Brighton Hove City Council to write their circular economy strategy. And I think just picking up the points that were made by Shyaam on the previous presentation, I've taken 150 local government officers through circular economy training over the last 12 months, with a view to helping them understand what circular economy is, but empowering them to be able to do circular economy in their own day jobs. And it's amazing how many people turned around and said, I've been waiting for something like this. This really gives me the opportunity to start changing internally. And you'd be surprised at who takes you up on this. So we had the head of procurement, who's got an annual budget of somewhere in the region of £250 million. We've just got them to agree, and I'm saying this confidentially, we've just got them to agree that their target by 2030 is that 75% of all external spend will be on circular economy products. Now that's a massive, massive shift from today's example where you're lucky if you've got 10%. So building relationships, going outside of your comfort zone is absolutely critical. What we do with the Circular Economy Club in London, we hold 12 events a year. We have everybody from architects to economists to designers, all in the same room, all networking, all sharing, but also exploring the art of the possible. And for me, that's absolutely critical. Explore the art of the possible, understand the room, and understand how you can actually access the people you need. I'm not going to say too much more because I know Anna's already spent 15 minutes giving you a video. I'm more than happy to take some questions or add some further points during the panel discussion.
Okay, thanks, David. So it's time for us to start with the panel discussion. The idea was that you raised your hand. I don't know if you tried this functionality, but in your user circle in the panel in the left, you can click on the circle and then, you will find something like, set status. And then that's maybe sort of scheduled way to make questions. So please set your status with a raised hand if you have questions, and we will try to keep you spotlight. Okay, Santi, of course.
Sorry. as usual, you'll get used to it.
I feel that you've been doing interviews, huh?
That's it, David. So I have a question for you. I worked for a little bit with the Circular Economy Club back in 2017, and back then it was the definition of circular economy was not super clear even for the club itself.
Yeah.
How what's the definition now? How do you make people understand what circular economy is? And I'm directing this to you because it seems that you're in charge of convincing people to go circular.
That's a really good question, and it's a really difficult one because we all have seen very clear definitions of what circular economy is from WRAP, the Waste Resources Action Programme, from ourselves at the Circular Economy Club, from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. We've seen it from Accenture, we've seen it from the EU, we've seen it from national governments. I've just had an intern working for me for the last 6 months who's reviewed 45 route maps from around the world. Nobody has finally defined what circular economy is. I think even the different steps and the different stages, whether you talk about the Resolve model or the Accenture 5 steps model, or whether you talk about a technological or biological circular economy. In a way, for me, and this is somebody who's worked on legal documents for 20 years, the definition isn't the key thing. It's about helping people to understand the theory of circular economy, but also the practice. And using examples is absolutely critical. So the very simple thing, and distinguishing from sustainability is also quite helpful, because a lot of people get sustainability, and a lot of people, and I've grown up in this area where as soon as you start talking about environmental stuff, you're described as wearing green wellies and walking around in a field. Now, that is, unfortunately, for many people, the definition of what sustainability is. Now, sustainability is very much about trying to do better with what we're already doing. For me, and this actually came from a quote from Michael Braungart, circular economy is about doing good. So you're looking at things from the start. You're looking at the life cycle. You're looking at the design. You're looking at the materials used. You're looking at the method of construction or the method of use. You're looking at the use phase, and you're looking at the end of life phase or next life phase. So when I talk about circular economy, I look at the design life. I look at the life of a product or service, or in the biological sense, the life of the material. And that actually, for me, really helps convince people and help them understand the opportunities of circular, because there are a multitude. And Anna raised the Mapping Week as a really good example. And I would encourage all of you to go onto the Circular Economy Club website and download the Excel document or access the Excel document. She said there's 3,000 different initiatives on there. I think it's about 3,500 now. But that is a really, really, really good resource of people doing practical circular economy stuff. And that's, in many cases, what people want to hear. They don't want to hear the theory. They want to hear people who have done it. So that's a very long-winded answer to a very short question, which is, how do you define circular economy? You define it based on the audience you're speaking to, I think, is my simple answer.
Super, thank you.
Good. Okay. I will now give turn to Caitlin, because she is also raising her hand. So Caitlin.
Okay. Hi. I have a question for both David and Shyaam about, of course, stakeholder engagement, but your experiences between research and working in the private sector. And I think that both of you are involved in the big three, or, very high promoting of circular economy organizations. and in terms of Ellen MacArthur, Circular Economy Consultancy and Circular Economy Club. And we as academics are very cynical and critical, but do you ever find that, it's not always the best solution, or there are downsides and trade-offs? And so how do you find engaging with stakeholders? And because also you talked about Shyaam, about the tool being simple for increasing the use, but then of course there are always these complications. So how do you, I guess, personally or try to judge this, keeping the mind open or in between research and then in the private sector, I guess, if that makes sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Maybe I can give it a start, and David can add his thoughts as well. I think what I've realized quite quickly is that as much as I personally, as a person who's passionate about the topic, both from a research perspective, from a consultant business perspective, of course, we all want the circular economy to happen tomorrow, and that's just impossible. So what I quickly learned, at least personally, is that it is a bit of a journey, and you have to be a bit patient as well with people and the kind of status quo and the kind of linear systems that we've built. So from that perspective, I think the reason why a lot of this stuff is taking so long is you kind of have to build this huge amount of awareness about the topic. As David mentioned, there's no kind of definition, so you have to kind of educate people about different examples and kind of inspire them, and then sort of translate that inspiration into actual action. So then you have to kind of convince people to start implementing circular economy pilot projects or try out new things which they're not sort of used to. So that's why I see it more as like this long-term thing, which of course, is not an answer that none of us wants to hear because we don't have so much time, I guess, given the impacts of the linear economy. But I think it's important to realize as kind of researchers, or if you're potentially going to go into the circular economy in the private sector or public sector, is to identify how to create that sort of journey for different organizations or different individuals or different stakeholders. So you're kind of indeed building this relationship over a long period of time, and trying to kind of identify ways that they can get started very quickly and kind of ramp that up as fast as possible. And yeah, I don't think there's a right answer for that. I think we're all trying to figure out what is that best way to scale this idea up. But I think it's important to realize that it's not something that can happen immediately, unfortunately. And you have to kind of see how to guide people in steps along the way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd agree with that entirely. And I think just to add to that, again, it's about understanding your audience. Who are you speaking to? Because I can have a conversation. Our local MP in Brighton is Caroline Lucas, who's head of the Green Party. She's exceptionally knowledgeable about everything environmental, but doesn't know about circular economy, which may sound a little bit odd, but people's scope of understanding aren't always the same as your own, and therefore you also have to think about how they're approaching it. So I also am the chair of the Institution of Civil Engineers Resource Management panel in the UK. I'm writing a book for them on infrastructure in a circular economy, and circular economy as a term doesn't actually mean a huge amount to many people in the built environment. But you talk to them about building information modeling, which is a globally used term that looks at the life cycle of new buildings, and then you overlay circular economy onto BIM, then you've got a very different conversation with them, because they're going, oh yeah, no, I understand that. Oh, okay, so you're talking about circular economy that sits alongside something we're already doing. Okay, that makes sense. And I think that from a research point of view is really quite important, to look at the externalities that they're all working within. We do find that most people prefer to understand that they're already doing something circular.
Yeah.
If you come to them and say, this is circular economy, get on with it, they go, well, we're already doing this and this. And you go, yeah, that's fine, carry on. You have to bring them with you. So going to understand your audience, understand what they're already doing, and understanding how they can actually feel as they're already doing circular economy stuff is a really, really good stepping stone to them getting on board, because you're already doing this. Hey guys, let's do a bit more. That's a very different conversation to, so do you want to hear about circular economy?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks. That's very valuable input. Thanks.
Okay, nice. I think we also had a question from Estefania. Estefania, are you ready?
Yeah. So I figured out this question for Shyaam, but I think maybe David has also some input on it. And it is more like when engaging with companies. And for example, you gave us your experience on trying to implement or show this circularity measurements for companies tool. And I was just like trying to think, like, for you to contact companies whenever you don't have, I don't know, like a direct or like a previous relationship with them, how do you negotiate like the value that they can take for them? Like, because you might perceive that, okay, so this is something that it would work for them and they need, but probably they don't really see like that value, and they would also find, I don't know, like some other value in the work you are doing. For example, maybe they just need like a narrative of how they're doing circular economy because they want to promote themselves. Or is there like a way to negotiate that to make it, I don't know, like appealing? Is it like worth like to do a little bit of extra work so that they would accept you and more happily collaborate with you? So that's my question.
Yeah, thanks for your question. No, it's a very good point that you're making. I mean, I think when we were building the tool, we were hoping that people would just like sign up to it in droves because they were curious about the circular economy and wanted to find out how they were doing. But of course, that's probably the case for like the 1% of companies around the world who actually know or care about this topic. So for the kind of others, where it is actually important to kind of engage them on the topic, we initially tried to kind of showcase how it could be beneficial for them. So what is the value proposition of a tool like a circularity measurement for your business? And so we were trying to figure out like what that value proposition could be. So there's, in the sustainability space, a lot of organizations that do evaluations of businesses on their sustainability. And they follow this more like name and shame approach, where they'll go out and just talk about the sustainability of different companies, they'll rank them, and then they'll shame the ones that are not doing so well, and they'll praise the ones that are. And so we didn't want to take that approach because we thought it was a bit less collaborative. So we wanted to kind of find a way to encourage companies to want to know more about their company's circularity and to want to actually take steps to improve. So of course, a lot of organizations were interested more because of the image value. Circular economy is a kind of a hot topic, so they wanted to promote, what they were doing on the topic. Some companies were actually really interested in understanding how they could improve from an operational perspective. So that was their kind of motivation to get involved. And so, similar to what David mentioned earlier, it's kind of like identifying the priorities of the different companies that you're targeting and trying to figure out how the tool could provide that value. But what I mentioned in my talk is to kind of identify these influential stakeholders. So even beyond any of that, what had the most impact in terms of reaching the widest number of companies was actually not approaching the companies themselves, but approaching the stakeholders that the companies kind of look to. So, we tried to see if the tool could be used by investors to evaluate their portfolio of businesses that they've invested in. Because that way, if you approach one investor and you get them to want to use the tool, you'll get, for example, a couple hundred companies immediately who use the tool and then will realize its benefits and try to want to become more circular. So I think it's important to kind of identify, yes, there's sort of a value proposition or a benefit to the companies themselves, but what are the kind of people around the organizations, maybe the business associations, maybe the investors, maybe public organizations that the companies have to kind of report to or address. How can you get them to kind of change the dynamics of what companies require or required to say in terms of circularity or show in terms of circularity? Because then you'll kind of make a more systemic shift in terms of getting a wider number of organizations who might not even have thought about circular economy to start thinking about it. And it's a lot less work than having to approach each company individually, for example.
I think that's a really, really good point. And that's one of the very good things about the Circular Economy Club, because we get a mix of 30, 40, 50 different companies all in the same room, and they can have shared knowledge, shared learning, shared discussion. I think there's 2 points you picked up there, which for me are really important. One, which is helping the public sector or the decision makers, sorry, not the decision makers, the standard setters, such as the public authorities, to set the scene for businesses to work within a circular economy. And we're seeing places like Amsterdam, Glasgow, London, starting to put in place policies and financial incentives for circular economy to happen within businesses. I think the other thing that's really interesting, I've spent a lot of the last few years supporting small and medium-sized enterprises embrace circular economy. And the really simple thing to do with them is go in there with a very open and listening perspective. Don't try to think that you can tell them how to do their job. Your role or a role is to actually go in and say, okay, how are you getting on? What sorts of things are you doing? And then you actually start to bring your expertise to help their job be easier. So in the last 2 years, I'll give you two very quick examples. Brighton Seafront's got a brand new development on it at the moment. They're putting in place a large food market for tourists to come in and have everything from Chinese to fish and chips to shellfish. And we got involved with the new leaseholder who's setting up this market. And we're having a chat with him, and I was saying, look, just tell me about what you're doing and we'll see what interventions might be able to occur. And he started going on about it and started saying, oh, we've got to put all these kitchens in. I said, well, have you thought about leasing the kitchen units? He goes, no, can you? I said, yes. And literally, it's space for a 10-minute call. He said, you've just saved me £1.5 million. I was going to go and buy all of that equipment and take out a huge loan. You've just given me an option that means that my running costs are going to be significantly lower. My risk is going to be significantly lower. And also, I'm going to get more up-to-date equipment. Another company I've been working with, they don't know if they're doing it at the moment because exhibitions are out the window. But they manufacture stands for exhibitions and the like. And they manufacture everything from the stands to the furniture. And they took me through their business, and I just started asking them little questions like, have you thought about using natural materials other than they're using wood already? Have you thought about, because they do a lot of international work, have you thought about, rather than building it in the UK and shipping it over to the west coast of America, which is a huge cost, time, and carbon footprint, have you thought about looking to see if you can find a partner in the location where you do quite a lot of work that can work with you to actually manufacture over there, thereby reducing a huge amount of your costs, essentially a license fee? And I think that what I found, you can never go into a company and assume that you've got a book full of answers that are going to be applicable to them. You have to go into that company and have an open mind and use your knowledge of circular solutions to be able to help them come up with a activity. For the public sector, I have something called a circular economy opportunity assessment, and we go through about 250 different opportunities that they could adopt and narrow it down to what's going to be best for their type of business.
And I just wanted to follow up on what David mentioned. I think since you were asking specifically about assessments, I think a lot of times, at least from what I've seen in the kind of space, there's a tendency to develop assessments that are these sort of objective numbers to quantify how circular an organization is. And of course, you can say something about the circularity of a company using these kind of metrics like percentage of reusable products or percentage of recycled materials, percentage of renewable inputs. But as David mentioned, I think a lot of times there's a lot more of a qualitative aspect to the circular economy. So what are the kind of strategies that they're thinking about? What are they currently doing that can be redefined or considered to be circular? Which sometimes these kind of assessments miss out on by purely looking at the numbers or trying to drill down on a quantifiable way to determine the circularity of a company. So with the tool that I mentioned that we were trying to build, it's similar to what David's describing. We kind of asked these more qualitative questions in terms of strategies that the company's trying to employ, what they're kind of doing currently, and what kind of areas of circular economy could be interesting to them, and trying to convert some of those elements into an evaluation of the circularity of the company. So yeah, that's something to maybe potentially keep in mind as well if your research is focused on, how do we measure circularity? I think there's an element of an over stress or exaggeration of the quantitative elements rather than the more qualitative aspects.
I'd agree with that. As somebody who spends half his time playing with Excel spreadsheets and numbers, circular economy definitely needs that touchy-feely understanding of practical interventions rather than just measurement, because measurement's great to measure success, but it doesn't help you getting circular economy into the front door. And I think that's the key thing. You need to bring the company and the person and the champions with you and make them feel that they're doing something and you're supporting them, rather than you're doing something and they're helping you out.
Okay, I have now a question. Yeah, it's a bit of a follow-up of what you just said. I will just quote a colleague of mine, Arijit Paul, who has a background in consultancy and now he's a postdoc, but he had done a PhD, etc. And he said that your quality as a consultant is defined by showing how well you know a concept and how well can you prescribe solutions. And your quality as a PhD is defined by how well you characterize all what you don't know. So I know both of you have academic backgrounds, and I wonder whether you agree with this statement. And for me, it's a bit of an issue navigating these two worlds when I have to do academic work with circular economy, where there's not even a definition, but then I have to talk to a company and I have to make sure that what I prescribe is of quality. So yeah, I wonder, how do you guys navigate this world? Yeah.
You want to go first, Shyaam?
I'll let you go first, David.
I think it's really, really delicate. And I think there's one word that is so important, and that is honesty. Regardless of whether you're an academic or whether you're a consultant, it's perfectly all right to say, I don't know. But just don't say, I don't know. Say, I don't know. I'll go in to look into that for you and I'll come back to you. There are too many people out there that think they know the answer and give an answer that is wrong. And then you've lost the company already. My academic career is probably not as shining as many of yours, I scraped through my Viva to the extent that my external examiner said I was going to fail you until you talked about what you'd actually done. So I'm not a typical academic. I'm more of a applied researcher. So we're using theory to try and prove some of the practical opportunities. We've just literally yesterday launched a new reverse logistics on-demand app in Brighton Hove that allows residents to request the collection of old tech to be reused and recycled and data erased. That's a research project, but it's a real project. By the end of the year, we're going to have the whole of Brighton, 280,000 people able to download this app and request the collection. The academic in me is going, this is a brilliant research project. The business person in me is going, right, I've had to employ 3 new people. I've had to go and take out a lease on a warehouse, which is I've signed up to for 3 years. I've just bought an electric van. I've got to get insurance. I've got to get this all communicated out to people. And then I've got to get people to use it, amongst a whole load of other things. And I think that differentiation is really key. As an academic, you can sit back on the number of papers and a number of examples and have a knowledge base behind you. But if you're going in and doing something practical with a business, you need that, but you also need an understanding of how that business works so that you're not compromising that business, but in fact enhancing it.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really nice way to put it. I think, with the PhD or with research in general, you're kind of building this knowledge base and trying to identify what information has been done in the past, what kind of evidence is there already, what are gaps in our current knowledge and understanding, and how can research fill in those gaps. And then, the kind of bridge between that and actual implementation or the translation of that into application in real life is then trying to understand, how can this knowledge be put to use in society by different stakeholders to actually implement circular economy thinking. So, if a lot of you are interested in trying to kind of bridge that gap, I think it's important, as David mentioned, to understand that, through your research, you've kind of built this knowledge base. And then it's important as consultants to different stakeholders to communicate that research in a way that identifies the right kind of audience to bring together, to give them the right pieces of information that you've gathered as researchers in order to help them essentially start taking steps towards becoming more circular, or to kind of build the necessary ecosystems, the necessary infrastructure to take that knowledge and build it further and actually apply it. So it's quite related, I think, the quotes that you mentioned about a consultant and a PhD, it's kind of two sides of the same coin, I would say.
I think just one other thing to add to that, and we've just had this experience in Brighton writing the route map. And one of the key communications tool is your style of writing. If you write from an academic perspective, be prepared for 99.9% people not to read it. If you write it from the perspective of somebody here who is still in kindergarten or lower school, and so it's appealing and readable, you'll have a much greater take-up. And I think that's really the key differentiation. If you're going to be talking to your academic peers, by all means, go academic and really high-powered. When you're talking to businesses, concise, very simple, but very powerful.
Okay, nice. Thanks a lot. I think we have to wrap up, unfortunately. I think, commonalities across the different speakers have been, in order to engage stakeholders, we have to provide them with incentives. We have to provide them with recognition. We have to involve them, not too little, but not too much. And I'm sorry, Thomas, that I leave you today with a raised hand, but you can, another time. Thanks a lot to the speakers. Thanks a lot to the audience for staying with us still. Okay, we have an announcement to make because we're very grateful to the 3 speakers that have joined us today. We usually would compensate the speakers with some nice Austrian wine, maybe, but we had to find an alternative, which is quite nice, no? So, Rupert, do you want to announce it? Yeah, okay.
So you're going to drink the wine for them?
We drink the wine for every speaker. That's our own.
Yeah, the wine is in good hands. You don't have to worry about that. Yeah, I will take another presenter. This feels a little bit like the TV. Good presenter. Okay, I will share my screen now. Yeah, hopefully. Application window. Here. Okay, so we had this idea to invest the money we would have invested in wine for a good purpose, and then we would offer 3 options for the speakers to make a donation to. So the whole theme is sustainability, and then we have 3 options. We have 3 nonprofits. One is intended to support research to reverse climate change, which is the Project Drawdown. The second one is a Climate Emergency Fund, which is a nonprofit that supports social, non-violent climate actions. And we also have a third option, which would be like a compensation project. So can we say the amount that we're giving? Yeah. Okay. So I will come back to you, Shyaam, Julian, and David, and I will ask for your preference. But basically, your task now is to decide which nonprofit you would like to invest 50 euros in, and of course, this is on our behalf. So with this, it's like a symbolic compensation, an expression of our gratitude for your valuable insights, and hopefully we can also live a little bit of a better world after this conference. So I think my moderation is over. Well, yeah.
Thank you, Anna. I hope you find this idea attractive because we wanted to avoid to ship now big parcels all over the world. And so I think this is something we can have a positive footprint out of that. Thank you all to the speakers. I think it was very interesting. And a good follow-up to the morning session where we had our speed updating and our own research activities. Are there any open points or questions we should discuss now all together? If not, thank you from our side here from Graz. What we have seen from the attendance list, at least most people were always attending. We have no idea who was really listening, but given the lively discussion, so most of you are paying quite some attention. Tomorrow we will have our stakeholder day. Thomas, you want to say something already about that?
No, just to remind people that tomorrow we're going to have a very engaging day with a lot of activities. It's going to be pretty intense. There's a lot of activities in there from 9 to 3. So just be sure to be here on time, 8:45 to 9, so we can start at 9 on point with all the different exciting activities on this design thinking challenge to solve a sustainability problem using circular economy solutions. And just for you, Shyaam and David, if you would like to join tomorrow's activity, you're also welcome. Just hit us an email or note, and we would happily receive you for our activities. That's on my side.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Good luck with the rest of the